100% Chance of Wine, sponsored by The Lodge at Columbia Point.
So what would you say for you makes your wines stand out, from others in the area?
I think that fruit source, where I'm sourcing my fruit and how we're making the wines. I'm very traditional. I like to say some of these young winemakers are like voodoo winemakers, where they think because they read it in a magazine they need to add it to the wine. I'm very traditional. Very minimal interaction with our wines. They're very elegant, very refined, and they're very, very age-worthy.
And looking at the bottles, you have so many different stories on these labels when you look at them. What are some of the labels that you have? Let's start off with the Yakima River one.
Yeah, so I think that's a great question. So each of our labels has a purpose and a meaning, and if you look at our labels, they all tie into my family history with the tractor and what we're trying to do in the wines. We currently have 9 different labels, around 50 different SKUs that you could come into the winery and taste. Very diverse portfolio. And then on top of that, we have about 150 library wines that you could come in and purchase and taste as well. Yakima River is a very interesting label. I've actually wanted that label for a long time, for the name Yakima River. When my great-grandfather homesteaded, he homesteaded along the Yakima River, and then with the introduction of the Rosa Irrigation District, they moved to better ground and irrigation. So for 15 years, I went and visited John Rauner and his wife Louise, who owned Yakima River, and finally he agreed 2 years ago to sell me that label.
That's awesome. So I know as someone's sipping the wine, they can look at the back label and kind of read about it and read about the history, which is great. You also have, is it Farm Boy?
Yeah, so we have the Farm Boy and Farm Girl label. The first vintages of those were around 2005. Those are kind of like our introductory wines, more affordable, easier drinking, just fun labels.
Right, and what are some of the other ones that you have?
So we have our main label, Smasne Cellars. We have a new label called Legendary, where we're concentrating on wines that have been aged for a specific amount of time. So for example, we're aging them maybe up to 6-8 years in bottle before we even release them. We have the Half-Ass label. It's kind of a fun label. We sell a lot of it. And the background behind that label is, growing up, my father always told me, if you're going to do something, don't do it half-ass. That's kind of how that label came around. We have the Pioneer label, and we have the Farmer label, and of course the Farm Boy and Farm Girl.
So someone looking to come purchase wine, you have so many different things they can choose from. Tell me a little bit more about that and how you're different from other wineries that maybe someone's looking to buy a bottle.
Yeah, so I think we're really unique in that our tasting rooms here in Prosser or in Woodinville, you could walk in this weekend and we're gonna have 8 wines on the list. You get to taste through those 8 wines, maybe some varietals you've never had before. And if you were to come back the following weekend, there would be maybe 8 brand new wines on the list. So it gives you can cover a lot of ground in a shorter amount of time.
Right, and at one time, if someone were to browse, how many can they pick from to purchase?
So our current menu library list has around 160 wines, and our current released menu has around 50. So over 200 wines.
What are some of the older ones they can pick from?
So they could come in this weekend and buy the first wine I ever made from Smasne 2003 Bunkhouse Red.
That's unique.
It's expensive, but they still could do it.
Right.
And we just did a library tasting where I went through and picked wines, and our club member, we have a really good following, a really good club, and they came in and were able to taste like 2006 Carmenieres, the old vine that was named, top 100 wines in Washington and things like that. So it's a lot of fun.
Just a quick question, being a winemaker, myself being a meteorologist, it was so hot. We had that really hot start to the summer. It's not even summer yet. What do you think that will do to the flavor profile of the grapes and when you finally decide to bottle those?
That's a great question, and we'll find out, right? That's the one thing about Mother Nature and being in this industry and never know what you're going to be forced with. If you look back at like 2010 and 2011, there was a really cold year, coldest on record, and people were really worried about those wines. But if you were knowledgeable and got ahead of the game, cropped at the right levels, made the right adjustments inside of the winery, I think those are some of the best wines we've made for aging. And if you look at, we've been really warm in 2021, but Mother Nature has a way of balancing that out. We've had a little cold spell right now, and I think we'll be just fine.
Anything that you have coming up in the near future, next couple of years, that you're excited about?
We're always evolving here and changing. I think that probably the legendary wines that I have in barrel and in bottle that we're just starting to release that have been aged exclusively. That's one thing where we're a little unique as well. We're not a winery who pushes out wines right after bottling. So for example, the Smasne Cellars label, we might bottle age those wines for 2 years before we allow someone to taste them.